So could you please introduce yourself with your name, pronouns, and any identifiers or hyphenates you use?
Yeah, my name is Samantha Ozeas. I'm a Chinese American theater maker, student, artist, she, her, human.
Love that. How do you define your race and ethnicity? And what does it mean
Um,
to you?
I was thinking about this discussion before, and I feel like the best way for me to describe it is by the way that my relationship to my race has changed throughout my life and my development in the different places that I've lived. When I uh, grew up in my neighborhood for elementary school and middle school, I was in a large Korean community, and being biracial and not part of the main culture of the community that I was in, I found myself kind of considering and perceiving myself as white until I went to high school in downtown LA and was a part of a very small theater community in which I was one of the only Asian people represented. So I found myself kind of being thrown into the role of like spokesperson and advocate in a way I hadn't been exposed to before. Um, and that kind of early young adult reckoning continued on when I went to a mostly white community, studied in a mostly white community at Emerson College in Boston. And then again, when I arrived at the school that I'm studying at now, CMU, in which it is noticeably more diverse, but also it's a community made up of a lot of different cultures and communities from around the country, which means that our collective upbringings about how we discuss race or how we interact with different people of different cultures is very different, and it's a whole other learning curve there as well.
Interesting. So with this learning curve for yourself, and it ties into, you being an artist, theater maker, all that, at a predominantly white institution, or, how do you envision a reimagined arts and entertainment industry?
Yeah, I feel like a reimagined arts industry to me means a community in which there is more diversity behind the table, enough so that artists are being viewed as for their accomplishments and for their potential, rather than somebody trying to check a box for diversity, or somebody trying to perceive a certain way to the public. That's a discussion that I have with my friends a lot, of feeling kind of devalued when we get the sense that some people aren't fully acknowledging us for all of the support or brilliance or artistic so and so that we can bring to the table, but are rather reduced to a box to check, and then not much more perceiving is done beyond that. You can definitely feel the ruse when it's up, and I think that a reimagined arts industry is a world without that.
So, what is your role in this reimagination? And you can talk generally, or what your work is through ZAPI Artists.
Yeah, definitely. So I am studying directing at the institution that I'm with right now, and a lot of the tenets that I bring into the room for directing, kind of general goals for care, or goals for always investigating ourselves and never coming to conclusions, absolutes, never drawing black and white lines, comes into my work with ZAPI. I've found a lot of my work with ZAPI specifically has to do with examining roles of artists in larger rooms, in larger discussions, but in the same way that as a director and playwright, I never feel like there are absolutes or hard lines to be drawn, I try to take that consideration and open-mindedness into my work with ZAPI.
Amazing. So you've talked about what you're doing through ZAPI, but I want to ask, why did you want to get involved? And you were talking about it, reimagining too, and I guess you have stakes, but if you want to elaborate further.
Yeah, sure. I first heard of ZAPI when Cindy began to start, sharing all of her work. We grew up around the same area in LA, and I'd kind of known about her in periphery, growing up. And then we went to school for a year together in Boston. So I found myself reading content from the beginning, and a lot of the questions that they were posing were questions that I was taking time to consider myself and with peers around me. And I found I went in hoping that the time that I would be able to dedicate towards this org would be time for my personal growth and growth that I can hopefully take with me into this reimagined arts community, and discussions that I can take into this reimagined arts community. And that is definitely what I found in the last however many months it's been working with all of you lovely people.
So now let's get back to you as a person. Can you share what matters to you?
Yeah. I'd say some key tenets of, what I guess my morality is driven by, things that are important to me: community, honesty, and putting individuals and myself over work and over product, which is kind of the difficult one, the one that I am trying to key into at the moment, the one that I am actively making an attempt to switch my mindset for, so that work does not become overbearing.
Could you talk a little bit more about that? How you keep yourself grounded in all the work that you do?
Yeah, for sure. I find that having more real life discussions, more face-to-face interactions and contemplations over a lot of, say, the topics that we're talking about or writing through with ZAPI, having those conversations in person and understanding that there's a lot more nuance than words on a page or words that you read, on the internet. Taking that nuance and applying it to face-to-face conversations is helpful and reminds me that, as I was saying earlier, there are no absolute answers, and there's never going to be a point in which we work hard enough and then we reach the goal and we solve XYZ problem that we're trying to open up and interrogate in the world. It's always going to be evolving conversations, and having those in person helps me ground that a little bit more.